All
Hello,
right,
good
welcome.
evening.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Good evening, everybody. It's February 8th already. Wow, holy cow.
Yeah.
Thursday, year of our Lord, 2024. This is episode 5 of Hannon's Canon. I'm your host, Dennis Emery Hannon from Indoctrinate This Incorporated. I have my awesome co-host here, Mr. John Rustino. How are you tonight, John?
Hey, Dennis, I'm doing good. Doing
And
really good.
Thanks. And we're also joined by Robin as well. Hello, Robin.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I got to hold on before she talks. I got to show you what I made for her. Hold on a minute. Give me a second. Sorry. 1 second. I know I'm holding up the thing here. But let me show you what I made before she speaks. Every time she speaks, this is going to happen.
I like that.
There you go. Go ahead, Robin.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Dennis.
Hey, Robin.
So there you go. But I'm so proud of these like elementary graphics.
I like it. Hey, it works. We know who's talking. We know who's who in the zoo.
Yeah, right.
So I'm sure a lot of people have heard the news, seen my name around with some of the stuff that happened to my son. It's been very difficult. I decided to come out about this and share this story. And I want to drive this point home to everybody listening. This is not about retribution. This is not about anything other than reform. I hope that through this story and sharing this experience that it sparks true reform and change. And my mission is simple. I want to provide a platform for parents so that people that have been in similar situations can get together and there's resources for other parents and we can share those experiences together and help support each other. I want to promote information regarding the harm of gender affirming care for youth, minors specifically. But ultimately, my goal is very simple. I am going to end gender affirming care for minors, period. I'm not going to stop until I do. So, right. I mean, that's it. So I hope that I was the first boot to drop. I will say that ever since I came out about this and went public, there has been one father every day that has contacted me and said that they have a very, very, very similar situation going on. And it's both refreshing because I can finally speak to somebody that can relate to this issue that I was faced with. But it's also concerning because there's a lot more of us out there.
Yeah.
So it's actually kind of depressing because it brings up old emotions and feelings that sometimes you kind of put behind you and you try to move on with your life and pretend that it never happened, but eventually you're reminded of those things. So I just wanted to start out with that because I think that people understanding where I'm coming from, why I'm doing this, more importantly, the reasons as to why I don't even know how to say it. It's hard for me. It's really hard. This has been very emotional for me. I think that every time I talk about this, it takes a piece out of my soul. But I think it's an important story and it's one that needs to be told so that it doesn't happen again. Ultimately, if it prevents this from happening to another child or parent again, then I feel like it wasn't in vain.
Well, yeah, you know, and now you've been through the media whirlwind the last couple of days. So I know you're exhausted. You're in every newspaper pretty much, every radio station, and even Joe Rogan, I think, spoke about the situation. I want to ask you, because I know people have asked me, because they were, you were on with Laura Ingraham on Fox yesterday. How did that whole experience, like just the experience itself, how was it? How, is it nerve-wracking? I mean, you get nervous, but how was it?
It was a weird experience. Television is not what I thought it would be. So basically it's like school picture day. You go and you sit there and they have the thing set up like school picture day. And there's basically a camera with a picture of eyes behind it. And that's where you're supposed to look. And then they have an earpiece and you can hear what's going on, but there's like a 7-second delay between what viewers are actually seeing and what you're hearing in the earpiece. And then the producer has a direct feed into your earpiece that they can give you instructions or tips or things of that nature. But there's 2 monitors and one has the live feed of the news, what people are actually seeing. and then the other monitor has your frame. But when you do it, they turn those monitors to the side, because otherwise you're going to be looking over and you're going to be constantly distracted with yourself, and it's not going to be like a real conversation. So basically, it was like having a telephone call, because I didn't actually get to see that segment until the next day.
Wow.
I didn't see what was being shown. I didn't see Laura. Wow. I didn't see any of that. It was basically like, shut off your monitor, John, and then talk into the camera.
Right.
And that's what it was. So it was really weird. It was bizarre how that worked. Not what I thought at all. And I see some people in the chat. Thanks, Noel. I appreciate that. Hey, Chris. Dominic, thank you. Appreciate that. So this isn't something that I enjoy doing. It's not. It's a hard conversation to have. But ultimately, I think it's important because it's one that needs to be had. It's like many of the other topics of discussion that we have here on the show. There's a lot of things right now that 10 years ago, it seemed logical. It just seemed nobody ever really gave it much thought. Like, what is a woman?
Right.
Right. What is a mother? Should men be allowed in women's sports? All of these things that just seem logical, that we didn't question, because it was just a what's the word, John?
It just didn't have it. It was you couldn't even imagine that we'd ever have the ability to do what's being done. It's almost like it's they're mutilating people. It's what is it? I don't even know what, Frankenstein, whatever. It's stuff that you would never imagine. It's sci-fi. I've never thought that I could. This stuff I'm hearing, like, I think about the older generation. Like, I think of my parents that are, older, like born in the 30s. Oh my God! No wonder, those people that are passed away, they couldn't deal with this. This is unbelievable. When I can't deal with it, you can't. I mean, it's insane.
And now these topics, though, have become so politicized.
Yeah.
That we're not even allowed to talk about it anymore. We're not even allowed to have open dialogue and discussion. And I've said it before, and when people are faced with an opposing viewpoint or opinion, they cry hate, right? They call you a bigot, they call you this, they call you that, just for an opposing viewpoint. And so when we start labeling things as hate speech, we start restricting speech in general, and then speech it's no longer free. Right. And when speech is no longer free and we restrict that First Amendment, all of the other amendments follow after. And that's why I like this show, because we can talk about these things, we can share opinions, and it's okay to be wrong, because there are opinions. About the, was that Robin in the back?
No, I was going to ask you something. Let me ask you a question. What do you think about, it's very political. So, you were on Laura Ingraham, so it's Fox News. So we know, right, what that group of people are. But if I were to go to MSNBC or something, the people watching that would be horrified by you, not by what happened, but by you. Do you think that's is it 50? Do you really think 50% of this country, or these people, really believe, or it's just so political that it doesn't even matter? Like, they don't even really pay attention to what's being done. It's just winning an election. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't believe that that they would really honestly be okay with it if it was in their own home.
It's hard to say, because there are so many polarizing views, and you're right. I mean, you go to one news channel and it's one thing, and then you go to another news channel and it's the complete opposite. And I think that it caters to people's opinions, but I think that it's how politicized everything is causing division among us, and then we become even more fractured and split as a society, and our viewpoints become even more opposing of each other. I don't know how anybody could possibly advocate for gender affirming care for minors. I don't understand it, and that's my opinion. It is child abuse, and a lot of people, they might have other opinions as well, but there is only one truth, and there's a lot of facts surrounding this. And it's interesting because after the news clip dropped yesterday, or the live show dropped yesterday with Laura Ingraham, a news article came out on Fox News today, and it's actually one of their front page news articles, and it's about gender affirming care for minors. And I'm gonna read a little bit of this because this is interesting that it came out the day after. And I quote, "A review of at least 60 research papers demonstrates no benefit to social affirmation, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, or surgical interventions for these youth." Quote, the lead author and vice president, AC Pediatrics, Dr. Jane Anderson, wrote in an email to Fox News Digital. In a fact sheet summarizing the findings, AC Pediatrics noted that, quote, "Youth who perceive gender identity does not align with their biological sex have high rates of mental health problems regardless of any affirmation of their gender identities. Adolescents who identify as gender incongruent often have existing mental health issues, including depression, anxiety, and so on, according to Anderson." And these researchers said in their review, quote, "They cast doubt on claims that social affirmation, like using desired pronouns of transgender identified youths, helps them in long-term psychological well-being. In addition, those opting for hormone-altering therapies are potentially interfering with not only sexual development, but also brain development," Osborne warned. "Testosterone and estrogen, the hormones primarily manipulated with such therapies, are an integral part of memory formation and mood." All right, you're interrupting a natural process of a child. We know the dangers of gender affirming care. Even you just look at the statistics, and I've quoted this before. A study was done, I think it was in 2021, by Bradley, Zucker, and Zing. And they concluded that 88% of boys desist back to their natal gender by the time they graduate high school. So those suffering with gender dysphoria, in this case boys, end up desisting back. Now, if you socially transition those children, meaning you change their name in school and you assign new pronouns, only 4 to 6% of them desist back. However, over 40% of children referred to gender affirming clinics receive hormone therapy, puberty blockers. They move on to medical progression, over 40%. This is a business model. This is their business MO, is gender dysphoria.
Yeah.
And these children, so what do? They prescribe, it was originally called Lupron, was the #1 prescribed puberty blocker in America. And Lupron was originally used as chemical castration for sexual offenders in prison to help them curb their sexual desires, primarily in cases of pedophilia. Now, Lupron is no longer, it's been discontinued, but it's available through off-brands and similar generic drugs. And Lupron, it costs about $400 a month just for that, in addition to the gender counseling or whatever that person may be receiving. And I think it's ironic because what does Mayo Clinic say about Lupron? Keep out of reach of children.
Yeah,
right. So when you look at that and you think about it, and then you think about, well, what is gender dysphoria? It is it's a mental illness, and I want to pause there because I think that we should all be sympathetic to people with mental illness. I know many people that have struggled with mental illness, and it's not something you celebrate. It's not something you promote. And yet here we are, gender identity disorder and gender dysphoria are both of those are classified as mental illnesses under the, I think it's the American Psychiatric Association, APA. And gender dysphoria and gender identity disorder are diagnosed using DSM-5, which is common among every mental illness out there. DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. Okay, so why are we affirming a mental disorder and celebrating it and promoting it like it's a virtuous thing to be? That would be like affirming somebody with anorexia with
Right.
liposuction. Why would you do that? You're not helping it. You're not treating it. And I think that a lot of this is from underlying mental illness. And we don't want to talk about that because there's a whole business model on that. And then you have the stigma associated with having these discussions. You get labeled a bigot, intolerant, you're transphobic, you're this, you're that. I have no problem with any adult that's, you're transgender or whatever, you do you. I don't need to know about that. That's fine. I'm not going to treat you any differently. I don't think anything differently of you. But when you start doing this to kids, that's where it bothers me. Because kids only know what they're taught.
You're forcing them to have a mental illness. They're actually pushing, but they're forcing them into it. And I don't know,
glorifying it to our kids, to where you're pushing it to make them want it, like it's something cool.
Yeah. And like to Dominic's point in the chat, a child's mind isn't fully developed until the age of 25. Now I didn't fact check that, but I think it's safe to say that even 18 and below, they're not fully developed yet mentally. They're still discovering themselves, what they like, what they don't like. And essentially what we're doing is we are giving children the right to consent to life-altering changes that are irreversible. Studies have shown that if you go on puberty blockers, there is a strong chance, if you're a child, that you will never experience puberty.
what age is it that they can do what not? What is the age that they say children can make up their own mind? What is that again?
Well, who knows? Because when you get a birth certificate now in New York, you have the option to mark gender X for the child.
Okay.
Wow.
And so gender with boys, I think, develops a little later on in life. I think it's about like between the ages of 5 to 7. But if you're marking them gender X or the opposite gender, you're already indoctrinating them into that. And I actually had a therapist testify at my trial that they couldn't diagnose my son with gender dysphoria because he was too young for his gender identity to develop. So how do you have a treatment plan? How do you have gender affirming care for somebody who's never been formally diagnosed? It's a business.
You probably know this. If a 14-year-old, whether it's put in their head at home or whatever, it says, I want to change my sex. They're able to do that, right? Just by saying it. They don't need anything like parental, okay, or anything like that.
Well, it depends. I mean, I'm sure it depends on the state, but I know in schools, most of the schools in New York, which we've discovered through FOIL requests, if they can and will, based on their own discretion, hide the gender identity from the parents. This is real stuff. This is on indoctrinatethis.org. It's under New York School Watch. And in there, we have links to each school and their policies, and in some cases, the pages that state those policies surrounding gender identity. So you've given a child the right to consent from their parents.
That is very concerning.
I know you've said it before, but don't you think, Dennis, that puts us on the road to lessening age of consent for other things?
I've often thought about that.
Yeah.
Because if a child isn't able to, if you're not old enough to drive, but you're old enough to transition and at 9 prevent puberty, and then you're a teenager, even 15 years old, you start wearing chest binders and this and that, how do you justify that? It doesn't make any sense at all. This isn't care. And that's how they frame it, is they call it gender affirming care. There is nothing caring about that. You're sterilizing children, you're mutilating their genitalia, and we're not even talking about the psychological effects.
It's starting to feel like that this will end up in a pedophile type area. Like, I think that's what Robin, that's what you were saying, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I know it's what we were, you just got that feeling if you can consent to do that, then I guess you could consent to have sex with an adult. If you feel like, you know what I mean? There'd be no reason why you can't.
I mean, you could do a lot of things if that's your, where does it stop? I mean, and I think that's the essence of the point that you're trying to make is where does it stop? If that's the baseline, if that's where we've drawn the line, is at 5 years old and the parents have no say at all, you know, it blows my mind, and it's hard for me because I've lived this, I've lived through this, and my son is one of the lucky ones in this, because I spoke to a lot of dads where their children aren't as fortunate as my son, and they've progressed on to puberty blockers, or, you know, they're considering top or bottom surgery or that kind of thing later on, and even before 18 though. That's what we're talking about here. I mean, when you're 18, you're an adult, do whatever the hell you want. As long as it doesn't affect me, I don't care, and I'm not going to judge you for it. You do you. I'm not going to, whatever. But when you're not even 18 years old and there's so many things that you can't do, but you're allowed to do this, and your parents, or a parent in this case, has no say, that is not the America that I thought I lived in. It's crazy. And studies have even shown that those that have medically transitioned or surgically transitioned, they actually have higher rates of attempted suicide than those who have not. So there's this argument where, well, you don't want your kid to kill themselves because they can't live in their body and this and that.
Right.
Yeah. It's completely false. That's not what statistics show. And then you have the other side of the fence where some people also say that, well, if you have a boy that likes to do girl things and wear dresses, then he must be a girl or identify as a girl, or you should let him identify as a girl. And what that is, that's not accepting. That feeds into the same kind of gender stereotypes that these same people that advocate for gender affirming care vow to destroy. Right? And the same could be said about maybe a lesbian girl if she likes playing with G.I. Joes. Right. You know, does that make her a candidate for gender dysphoria if she's confused just because she likes doing boy things? Should we consider gender affirming care for her and see if she feels like, just because she does those things doesn't mean she is. There's a huge difference. And so it's so contradictory, some of the arguments that people use for this, because what they do is they actually just reinforce gender stereotypes.
Yeah. Robin, are you going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, just to make it simple for people, would you let your child, or would you, because you can't even would you want your child who's under 18 to get a tattoo? I mean, should a 7-year-old who likes SpongeBob be allowed to get Patrick Star on their arm? I mean, where do we stop this? Good
point. Both are permanent. Where does it stop?
I tell you what, we got a serious problem with just, you know, there's a lot of this is such deviant type stuff. I mean, to have this, look, it's sick, because what we are headed down the road, in my eyes, of this being able to, they've already tried with the certain with pedophiles. They've already tried to normalize them. This is perfect. This is right down. I mean, this is doing it.
And Cass makes a great point in the comments about there being tons of trans people that are against this. It's not that people are against transgender people. It's that it's about our children and protecting their rights.
It is. I remember when women and children used to be a protected class.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to that? Where are the feminists? Remember the feminist movement?
Yeah.
Where are the feminists now when anybody can identify as a woman? You have men completely dominating women's sports because we we refuse to recognize biological differences. One example is my son had a doctor's appointment. He had a physical. And afterwards, I reviewed the medical stuff. I logged into the portal and I saw that his gender was still listed as female. How can a doctor provide an accurate diagnosis or treatment if they won't even acknowledge his biological gender? So if he went in there with abdominal cramping when he was 13 years old, do you think maybe he's menstruating? If he were 16 years old, would you give him a pregnancy test?
My God,
Men cannot get pregnant, and that's another, like, I see this as like men getting pregnant. No, if I were to give birth, I would break over 200 bones in my body because we don't have the birthing attributes for it. And so it raises serious concerns as to how doctors can provide accurate treatment when they won't acknowledge biology.
yeah, right. When you go down the road, like think of that craziness. Think of what he just said. You give him he's going to come in at 13, 14 years old with a stomach ache, and they're going to think he's having his period. What the hell is this?
Yeah.
This isn't even the same world anyone remember. What I want to do, and we can't find it. I've been asking and asking. I want to find someone who supports this. I'd love to. We've said this before, Dennis. Love to speak to them.
Yeah, so if anybody out there has an opposing viewpoint, if they want to come on, let's talk about it, and we'll have a civil, open dialogue and debate. But everybody that has, had something to say to me about this, none of them will come on, and none of them have valid arguments. What they do is they cry hate, they call you names, and they get loud. And I say, don't cry hate, don't call names, don't get loud. Get better arguments, because obviously you're not educated on this. You're pushing ideologies and beliefs that aren't backed by any science or evidence or experience or anything like that, and it's just how you feel. So no, I am not going to play pretend with you. I'm not. You can either be nice sometimes or right sometimes, and sometimes you can't be both. Right. And in this case, it's not about being nice, it's about being correct. In the history of mammals, there's always been two genders. And to make it even more interesting is the radicals on this side, they separate people into two different categories. Non-binary and binary, right?
Right.
And so what is that? Well, you just created a whole nother binary system. It's so contradictory. By classifying people as binary and non-binary, that's a whole nother binary system.
Right. My God. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense at all. And there are no logical arguments for this. This is biology it's since the history of man.
Yeah. I've yet to find someone, even looking it up online, that can really give me a good reason or any kind of argument other than, that's what they want, or they feel like it, that type of stuff, or whatever. Just dumb shit, like you were saying, not dumb, but like how many little girls do we know that like to play baseball? A lot, and that are very good at it. I mean, that's usually considered a boy's thing, right? Playing sports, but it isn't. We know that. But girls, it doesn't mean that they don't want to be boys. They just like to play the game, or maybe they like cars, maybe they like whatever.
Dear God, I would have been transitioned.
Oh yeah, immediately,
because all I liked was sports.
New York City is where they do all these surgeries.
Jeez. Yeah, and there was somebody that commented it. So, What is a Woman? That's a great movie, highly recommended, awesome movie. It's a guy that just goes around and asks people, what is a woman? He goes to a women's rally. And he's holding up a sign, what is a woman? They're all at a women's rally, but yet not a single one of them can define what a woman is.
Wow.
And it's madness. It's almost like I'm living in a bad episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I don't even... I really would love this. This goes for a lot of things. Because I'd love to see the people that are so that you find that are okay with this or for or pushing it. I'd really like to know how much of it is in their own home. I'd love to see if it's really happening. You know what I mean? Let me find out what you've done, because I'm sure when it hits your own house, you know what I mean? You're not gonna. It's just you're not, because you can't even make you can't even say anything that even gives me pause to say, oh, maybe. No, there's nothing, Dennis. Nothing I can think of. I don't know. Let's see what Dominic's saying. There's no way, no matter where you stand politically, you can ever sit there and have any logical sense about allowing child to have a sex change. Similar to Robin's point, would you give a child a bottle of Jack Daniels next? No, because it would destroy the mind and affect their development. Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, so all you have to do is just Google what the top puberty blockers are. And they're really, what they are is they're generic forms. There's different cocktails, but they're really generic forms of Lupron, which we discussed earlier, and how that was introduced and what that was actually intended for. But when you look at the package inserts for these medicines, some of the side effects are they lower bone density. This is a good one. Depression and other emotional disturbances related to suicide. The package insert for Lupron actually says that which is the #1 prescribed puberty blocker in America, or the generic forms of it, lists emotional instability as a side effect and warns prescribers to monitor development or worsening of psychiatric symptoms during treatment. It's been associated with seizures, and then you combine it with cross-sex hormones, and then you're left with sterilization. And like I said, the majority of children that take these puberty blockers, they will never experience puberty.
Wow.
And there was a point that somebody made in the comments too that I wanted to, so we're seeing right now is a lot of detransitioners, where people have, they've transitioned fully, whether chemically, medically, surgically, and then they realize that, hey, I was forced into this. I had maybe some underlying mental health treatment that wasn't being addressed, and I was persuaded to go down this path. And now that I did, I deeply regret it, and I can't undo what was done. Rachel Levine, our health secretary, it's a he, but apparently he is now a she. He dresses up in, I'm sure, have you seen that before, John?
I have, yes.
So Rachel Levine, I forget what their biological name is or was. It's scrubbed. But they were quoted saying that they couldn't imagine their life without their children.
Oh, wow.
Well, look what you're doing to our kids. If you can't imagine your life without your children, imagine what you're doing to these poor kids that'll never be able to have a family or raise a family on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this isn't care, and that's how they spin it off. And we talked in other podcast episodes before about how they rewrite language. And by calling it gender affirming care, it makes it sound like we're being sympathetic, but we're not.
Oh, we're like we're like I said, we're like Dr. Frankenstein. That's what we are.
Dr. Tran.
Dr. Tran, yeah. God don't make mistakes. He makes you a boy, you're a boy. He makes you a girl, you're a girl. I really can't understand how people don't see this. I'm really confused by people getting this mixed up and supporting it. Yeah. Same.
I agree.
Yes, and Joe Rogan. That's right. Yeah, Noel. It is incredible. He's the biggest podcaster in the world. So, well, because they even know. He knows. I mean, that's the thing. If I bet you, if we could somehow, I guess it would have to be on a ballot somewhere nationwide. I would love to see the numbers of the people that come out for and against. I'm going to say there's probably about 75. There's got to be a ton against. Probably over 80% of people. If it could be anonymous.
If they could be anonymous, because they're afraid of being attacked, right?
You would have to be anonymous.
And that's the sad part about this, is because nobody wants to speak up about it because they're afraid of the labels. They're afraid of repercussions with their work, their job, and friends, family, what have you. So we accept it. And John, I've said it before, first we tolerate, then we accept, then we celebrate.
You really have seen that. Yeah.
That's how you do it with all of these different things that we're rewriting language on. That's how you do it. That's the 3-step process to it. And
Well,
we're not allowed to question it. And it's scary to see the direction that this is going, because they use influence so that they can rubber stamp a diagnosis. And then once they rubber stamp a diagnosis, then it paves the way and fast tracks to medical treatment or intervention.
you know, and this is going to go back a little ways, but I mean, like, and you're so right on that statement about then celebrating it. And this is fine. And at this point, it's long gone. But it just reminds me of being in the 80s, and you weren't used to seeing, you just weren't used to seeing two guys holding hands.
Yeah.
Or two women. It would be a shock. I'd be like, oh my God, what's going on here? So, okay, you took on that. It went on, and everyone's seen, everyone goes on. Then I remember the next big battle was gay marriage. It was huge, and people were furious. Everyone was all kinds of stuff going on. But today, it's fine. I mean, think about it. You'd much rather see that than what we're talking about here. You know what I mean? Like it's so true about celebration. After the things that you didn't want got shoved down your throat, here's how it goes. And now, because the other thing is so much worse, that I'll take what before seemed not, you know what I mean? It's just fucked up.
And you hit on a good point in one of the previous podcast episodes. You said it's almost like things keep getting worse, so that we look back and we say, what was the quote? Do you remember that? It was something like,
it's kind of what I just tried to say, but I butchered it.
Things keep getting worse, so that you look back and then you think, oh, well, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
And we keep setting the bar at a new height, and then the stuff that we thought was crazy when it happened 5 years ago is now nothing compared to what's happening today. And I don't know your exact quote, but it was along those lines, and it really hit home with me. And I thought about it after that, and I was thinking, he's right, because like what you had mentioned with gay marriage and everything like that, it really hits home. And I have gay friends. It doesn't bother me. I also have trans friends. I have quite a few trans friends. I actually have a painting that one of my trans friends made for me downstairs that's been there for years. And great people. I don't judge them. Those are their life choices. But when we start pushing this on kids, it's not, and we showed the Nexus charts too of words and the frequency of words used in publications and media. And 20 years ago, this wasn't even a thing. It wasn't something that it was rare that you saw somebody that was trans. It wasn't a common occurrence or thing that we really talked about. And now it's everywhere. So and then you look at the frequency in which it's talked about in the media, and it doesn't appear to be organic. It almost appears to be something that is being promoted, and almost a narrative, just another narrative in the media that they're trying to push.
Yeah. Cass here says, it is wrong that a man surgically changed into a woman still wants the same rights as both genders, and equality and equity is what I have been told on TikTok literally yesterday. Yeah. TikTok's out of control.
It is.
It really is.
It is. And then you have sports, which makes it even more crazy. Let's see a female get into a boxing ring, right, with Mike Tyson. Mm-hmm. It would be awful. That'd be terrible. I wouldn't want to watch that. That would be a terrible thing to see. And I think that, I've said this before, it's everybody wants to be equal in life until it's time to split the bill.
Yeah.
Then some are more equal than others.
Right. I had made this argument on a podcast long ago, and Robin fought me, and we had an argument kind of, sort of, because I don't think you're understanding what I was trying to say. If you're going to have this, and men are going to become women and women are going to become men, then I always wondered what happens to their license changes, I guess. Their license would change. So now they are a female. So that means if the state and the government says you're a female, everyone says you're a female, then go fight Mike Tyson, because I don't know what else to tell you. Or if they tell you you're a man, the woman turns into a man, and it's on the thing now. They are legally a man. It says I'm a man. You're a man. Okay, you're a man. Well, then, do you get my point? Like, I guess that
Yeah.
if we're going to allow that, then
My problem is
it's out of the cat's gone. It's out of
then
the
what
jar.
about the reverse? What about the man who becomes a woman and
If we're
says,
going-
"Hey, I'm gonna."
Well, if we're going to allow it, that's the problem with allowing this to happen. How do you stop it? You can't tell. You're letting them do it. You're telling them. You're changing everything. Social security numbers, the license, the whole damn thing. So who's going to? That's my thing about it. Like, I don't agree with it. I don't think that should happen. I don't believe that women should play in men's sports, all that. But my point was just saying, like, you know what? There's going to be disasters, but what am I supposed to do? I can't stop it. How could you? You'll be a bigot. You'll be whatever they want to call you. Just having this conversation, we're both bigots, all of us sitting here.
Yeah, and then like, I've often wondered too, is how does that like affect census data?
Yeah, I wonder too. That's a good point.
You know, and so there's so many things that snowball from that.
Yeah. Dominic says this is for sure a new uncharted territory compared to where we were to where we are. I mean, even look at books schools were distributing to kids that were more X-rated than an adult magazine.
Yeah, it's terrible. And these books, Dominic, they're so bad that you're not allowed to read them at the school board meetings because it violates the rules for the school board meeting. But they have them in the libraries and they're available for, you know, grades K through 5 to check out on their own. It makes absolutely no sense at all. I've seen some of these books out there. I actually got a couple of these books removed from my son's school district when I came out about this at a school board speech. And but they quietly removed them. So why were they even there to begin with? If you know that they're wrong and you remove them and they shouldn't be there, then why did you get them? Why did you put them there to begin with? And some of these books, they were, one was described as, quote, an easy to grasp picture book exploring sexism, sexual identity, and sexual orientation. And that book targeted K through 3.
Wow.
It's desensitizing and it fractures the family unit. And now you have state funded educators that think that they know better than the parents. And they think that children should have the right to consent. And that is the world that we're living in. And unless more people stand up and say, no, I don't accept that as normal. We're not going to accept it as normal. That's not normal. It's going to continue to progress and evolve.
It is. And that word consent is a dangerous word because, like I said, I'm fearful that in another 10 years, you know, the thought of pedophilia will be fine. I mean, or, you know, they'll push it so far. It's concerning. It scares me because when you say consent, man, that's what it always has been. They can't consent, right? They're too young. They can't consent. They're mentally ill. You know, they're disabled. They can't consent. Well, they're just taking consent and it means nothing. Really, consent's going to be out the window. You won't even have that word anymore. So
it's sickening, and I don't know where the world is going.
Let's see here. Adults. You just made the argument you can't bring up that type of book at a board meeting full of adults. Then how is it right for a child? Exactly.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not. But the problem is the people in authority that have the power to do something about it won't admit that it's wrong. They're the ones responsible for putting it there to begin with, and they can't justify their actions. Now, who could even justify that? They can't.
No. They can't justify any of this.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
We can't. They can't. I remember when we were talking about the Niagara, because we're here and I'm here in Niagara Falls. We're talking about the Niagara Falls School District. I kept saying to myself, to you, I'd love to be able to talk to some of these school board members that I think I know them. I know the business they run. And do they know this? Do they know it? They can't. And if they do, and they're just being complicit there, holy cow! It changes how I think of these people. Because
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Dan.
No, I mean, it kind of goes back to the doctor thing, right? If you have a doctor that won't acknowledge the biological sex of a child, how do they perform accurate treatment? So then what are they doing? Do they actually believe that, or are we just pretending? And if you're just pretending, then you're so full of shit.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're pretending. So that means that you're gonna, in your mind, you know that this person is a male, but you're gonna pretend that they're not, so that you can give them the treatment that they need in that scenario.
It's insane. It's insanity. It's just not the same. It isn't the same country, world. I don't know what to say anymore, because out of all of this, and every time this discussion, we have it, every time we've done a podcast on it, the word consent is what I always go away with, thinking that is such a slippery slope. Because once you tell me that a child can consent to anything without their parents, why can't it be everything then? So,
yeah, and they're not even, this isn't even like an elective thing. They're deeming it essential medical care. That's what happens if you don't play ball with that. Then you're interfering with the essential medical care of your child in their eyes. And we just saw it. A 14-year-old girl was removed and placed into CPS custody. The parents lost custody of the child because they wouldn't go along with the transitioning of their 14-year-old.
Yeah. Wow. That's right. Yeah.
And we warned about that. I warned about this happening. I said, look, if you don't go along with this, CPS is going to step in.
Yeah, you said, I remember that on one of our podcasts.
And it happened. And it actually happened. And it's sad. And I wish I wasn't right about this, but I could see the writing on the wall. I knew the direction that it was going.
Yeah. I can't even imagine 5 years from now what we'll be talking about, because I know this isn't stopping here. We're not stopping right at this point. We're going to keep on pushing, and I know you'll keep on fighting it, and so will we. So all of us here, I know all of us watching will. We can't be silent anymore, though. No longer being a silent majority.
We can't, and now is not the time to be silent. You can't be lukewarm in this war, or you're going to get steamrolled.
Yeah, and then you're going to turn around and say, "Oh my God, my grandkids," or "Oh my God, my kids," something. Because it'll get you. It'll come your way. It will.
It will.
You know?
It's already at your doorstep.
Mm-hmm.
You're powerless. There's nothing that you can do. You just...
Well, that was like the first day I met you. I was thinking, I didn't know anything. And when I found out, it was like, that's how I was thinking. Oh my God, this is right here. This isn't Western New York. This isn't happening in San Francisco, out in California or somewhere out west or somewhere on the east, on one of the coasts. Right here. Right in a place that is probably as middle as any. I mean, you could pick up this little county and throw it in anywhere in the middle of the country, because that's what we are. We're basically we might as well be Pennsylvania or Ohio. And it was right. And you're right. I mean, it's right here. I was still blown away. I'll never forget the day. I didn't know where you were going to tell me you were from, and I was stunned when you when you said where you were. So yeah, it's right here, everyone.
Yeah, we're neighbors.
Yep.
Pretty much, John. You and I were neighbors. We're not that far away from each other.
No, and that's the biggest key that I think it's right here. It's right here. It's not something you think is going on the West Coast or something.
So I just encourage the viewers, if you have a child, have these difficult conversations with your child surrounding gender ideology being pushed in society, because if you don't have these conversations with your child, somebody else is going to before you that thinks that they know better than you. Right. And the next thing you know, you have lost your role, you've lost your rights, and you've lost your influence, most importantly, over that child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's all it is influence. When we talked about the numbers earlier about how 88% of kids desist, only 4 to 6% desist after they're socially transitioned. That is influence. And so you've got to just talk to your kids. And I think that's the biggest thing. And use your voice and, and speak out for what you believe in. And sometimes more importantly, what you don't believe in. And draw that line in the sand, because if we are silent, we're complicit.
Yeah.
And if we're complicit in this, then we have no right to complain when things get bad or trouble comes knocking at your doorstep.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely right. That goes for so many things. Dennis, you were one of the busiest people in media the last couple of days. You were everywhere. You've been everywhere. You're everywhere from the UK all the way back here, probably in Australia, all over the world. You've been seeing. You got to be tired.
I am so tired. I can't wait to end this podcast. I'm
What's on?
exhausted. I'm emotionally drained. I was going to come on here and tell my story a little bit, but I think people have heard it. They know it. It's already out there. If you're not familiar with the story, you can find just
Google your name. Yeah.
because it's out there now. But I hope that, and they are, more parents are coming forward about this, and they're saying, you know, that this happened to me. And that's what we need. And I hope that it sparks true change and more people do come forward. But yeah, I am so damn tired. I've been doing this on top of my 9-to-5 job. And then, you know, on the off days, I have my son, and I don't talk about anything that I'm doing with him at all. I try to keep him out of that. So it's hard. It's been really hard. I'm drained. So
Well,
my dog is pushing me away from the microphone. I've got a Great Dane over here. So
right. All right. Here's what we'll do then. We'll be back. Well, we're coming back. Are we doing Wednesdays? What are we doing? I can't remember. Or should we just wait and let everyone know?
Every other Wednesday?
Every other Wednesday. All right. All right. So you'll be able to catch this every other Wednesday, 7 o'clock, right here. We'll have all different topics, of course. So, Dennis, I'm going to, I'll wrap it up for you because you're tired.
No, so thank you. And I just want to thank everybody for their support, their prayers, their shares. I don't like being the center of attention. This is all new to me. I'm a software engineer. I don't like, being public facing, but I feel like I don't have a choice. So I just want to thank everybody, and you got to fight. So thank you.
All right, guys. We'll see you on Wednesday. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us.